Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! I worked in the back office administration piece, not out on the floor. One day, one of the checkout girls called me over and said they were trying to scan a lady out, but one of her items did not have a barcode. I figured maybe it had been stuck somewhere strange, but checked it out and I didn't see anything. In fact, I didn't even recognize the item when I looked to see where I could find a second one to scan. And I knew the store pretty well. It was an absurdly hideous piece of almost homemade-looking costume jewelry, not like anything we offered. I thought maybe we had a new supplier I was unaware of, so I looked at the tag and lo and behold, it was a hand-drawn price tag. So definitely not ours. There were a lot of shops in the area, so I figured someone bought it nearby and it slipped out of their bag or they set it down by accident, and this customer assumed we were selling it because of the price tag. I figured whoever left it would be back to look for it soon. It was way overpriced, $80 for the one necklace, so I brought it to customer service and returned to business as usual, counting the minutes to close and regretting my life choices. But as the day marched on, a few more people appeared with similar stuff, some more jewelry mostly. One was a sweater that was actually a sweater we did sell, but with huge garish rhinestones added on that were definitely not an SKU we offered. People kept coming to check out with lots of things we actually sold like makeup mirrors, handbags and shoes, but always unnecessary rhinestones, sequins and beads glued on that definitely didn't come from us or the original manufacturer. So finally the manager just had staff do a sweep of the store and collect anything with rhinestones on it, or anything with a handmade price tag, and put them in the lost and found. Though we wonder how someone's personal belongings would become scattered all throughout the store and didn't think they could have really been accidentally lost. Our working theory was that someone got in a fight with their shopping companion and did it out of spite, like maybe a couple broke up or a sibling rivalry or something, but we'd resigned ourselves to the fact that we'd never know. Our lost and found was a single basket about the size of a TSA security bin at the airport, and there was so much of this stuff that it overflowed past the top, so after a couple days, we dumped it all in the trash. A few days after that, a middle-aged woman comes in decked out head to toe, in sequins and glitter and rhinestones with neon makeup like a sixth grader would wear to their first school dance, and she asked to speak to the person in charge, identifying herself as one of your partners. I knew we were about to get some answers to the other day's mystery. I stopped all my work. I was ready to hear how and why she ended up leaving half her wardrobe scattered around, and why anyone would voluntarily dress like that after 40. So I listened to her going at it with customer service, and it became clear she had bought things here, maybe, unclear if she'd even paid for them or not, or if she just used things from here without paying for them. She then bedazzled them, either by purchasing them or covertly bedazzling in the store without buying the items. We never did find out which. She then put them back on the shelves and now expected to collect a check after they were purchased, at an upsell price that she'd added on was her handmade price tag. Apparently she had done this in a few stores and was going around with business cards claiming her designs, bedazzled versions of department store products, were sold in big department stores like Karen's, Fab Designs, as seen on the shelves of Macy, Nordstrom, JCPenney, and more. The manager explained this was not a consignment store and she couldn't just leave altered products here for people to buy and expect to split the money with us. She was sure we must just not understand that she had improved the items with rhinestones, thereby making them more valuable. I was shocked when the realization set in that we understood what she was saying but still didn't want her doing it. She was irate, offended, threatened to break off the partnership that we did not want and did not know we had, and eventually demanded the stuff back. The most senior manager on the floor had come over by this point, not because she'd asked to speak to the person in charge, but because she was causing a scene. And none of us were sure what to do about being on her business card. Plus, everyone, regardless of seniority, was equally curious about the rhinestones mystery. And he explained we'd gotten rid of the stuff. Because, well, she didn't bother to explain this arrangement to any of us, but we aren't a pawn shop where you can hook personal goods. A major argument ensued. She gave us two choices. Go through the dumpster and salvage the things you threw out, or refund me the adjusted, upcharged cost to the items you threw out. The manager then gave her two choices. Leave or be escorted out by security. The manager did worry that there could be repercussions for throwing out all her stuff, since technically corporate policy was that we were supposed to hang on to lost and found items for 7 business days. So he offered her some coupons to end things on a good note. She didn't take them and screamed at us that we needed to replace everything and pay for new material to re-bedazzle them. At that point, the manager more flatly insisted she leave. She didn't. Security had to escort her out. To our total shock, she kept telling security she worked here, and really confused them because they'd never seen her, so weren't sure if it was because she was crazy or if it was because she was from corporate, i.e., someone who could fire them. We had to explain to security and her that in fact she did not work here and this partnership was non-existent, again explaining that she couldn't sell her own products here in our department store. She kept saying, "We can negotiate you a higher cut. That was just my starting offer." So after a bit, the manager just gave up on explaining and stopped engaging with her. She tried to come in every day for a week after that, to the point that we had a security guard stand right near the door to redirect her before she could even step over the threshold. She got in one more time through the fire door, with which she set an alarm off. We had to evacuate the store. So we let her know loud and clear that the next time the police would handle her. I guess some other stores had already made good on that promise, so she stopped coming. But she kept doing this elsewhere around town for several weeks, until she was blacklisted by every store from the highest-end boutiques to the dollar store. I don't know if she didn't understand how stores worked or just didn't care, but she really created a lot of extra work for us. I will say this, many people were coming to the register to purchase her items, and that department chain is bankrupt now, so she probably has a lucrative Etsy-type store and the last laugh. Happened some years ago, still dealing with the aftermath. I went out to buy some things from the supermarket with my boyfriend, now husband. I looked so obviously femme, even a dumb person won't think I worked at this store. For God's sake, I was wearing a dress and heels. Boyfriend is in a separate aisle. I'm quietly looking through the shelves for my things without bothering anyone, when someone tugs at my elbow very sharply, almost making me stumble. It's this woman, the entitled mom, glaring at me. Her teenage kid is behind her looking extremely embarrassed. "Where do I find the wine?" she asks. I don't know. You should ask an employee. Please, let go of me. The entitled mom looks me up and down. "You're an employee. Just shut up and help me or I will get the manager." At this point, I've read enough stories to know how this ends. Politely told her to leave me alone and walked away. Next thing I know, something hits me in the head, hard. I swear to God, I genuinely thought I was dead for a second. It doesn't even hit me that something is wrong until I realize that I'm not even moving, even though I think I am. The only thing keeping me grounded is that I've gripped the shelf and kept myself upright. There is a lot of yelling happening and I can't genuinely focus on what's happening. Eventually, I lose a battle and pass out. When I came to, I was in a hospital. My boyfriend filled me in on what happened. So when I turned around and walked away, the entitled mom was so furious that she grabbed a glass jar and hurled it at my head. Whatever her faults, she had excellent aim. The wounds were severe and she pretty much cracked my skull open. People around us alerted staff, and the manager came over and security detained her until the cops came. My boyfriend came up onto the scene and got me to the hospital in time. Till the end, she just kept saying she was trying to teach me a lesson for looking down on her. Her husband came with her children to see me at the hospital. I don't think they were ready to see the extent of my injuries. Her husband broke down in front of me and told me she wasn't the woman he loved. Later, I found out through my lawyers that he served her divorce papers. Her family covered all my medical expenses without us asking. Her husband seemed like a really nice man. It's been a few years, but I always wondered why she was so angry when she clearly had a family who loved her. A part of me will always wonder that. Eventually, she was charged and sentenced to prison. The case actually wrapped up a few weeks ago, and she was sentenced to 12 years in prison on a bunch of charges. Along with her jail term and her personal life falling apart, she also had to cover my legal expenses entirely upfront. Her lawyers tried every dirty trick in the book to keep the case going, but it ultimately blew up in her face because she had to pay for the delays. She also had to pay for my therapy, that too upfront. I've been enjoying the peace for the past few weeks and staying inside with my family. For a while, I had some memory issues that slowly got better. For a solid year after the incident, I couldn't step out of my house because of the intense fear that something or someone would attack me. With therapy, I am better. I still can't step inside grocery stores, department store as they are called in the States, I think. But I'm hoping to overcome this hurdle too. My husband, he's a boyfriend in a story, had to go to the therapy too. He still sees me lying in a pool of my blood in his nightmares sometimes. I wouldn't wish this experience on my worst enemy, even though ultimately it did work out in a way, I guess. So many lives were destroyed because of her age. What was she so angry for? I guess I'll never know. But there are silver linings. I am pregnant with my first, and through the nausea, somehow my little bean is giving me strength to overcome more and more each day. Anyway, the case is wrapped up, so I thought you guys would like to read this story. Thanks for sticking around. Edit. I didn't expect this story to blow up the way it did. Thank you for the awards, the hugs, and the love. I am doing much better today, only onward from here. Special thank you to the dear friends who have shared stories of their trauma. I replied to you personally and said it here again. We are only as strong and capable as the people around us. When crippled with fear, I will remember the child I'm about to have and your stories. Together, we will overcome fear and live with kindness and courage. Thank you for the good wishes for my baby. I call the baby Bean because it's a cute pet name, no? Thinking about calling the baby that name even after they are born. And now, some commonly asked question. Did she express remorse? No, she never did. She was asked to take the stand once, and it was the only time during the trial we saw her cry and break down. But even then, she blamed me for ruining her life. There was no apology and no explanation. It was a random, brutal, and senseless act of violence designed to hurt me. How are you now? Much better, thank you. Still going to therapy, still taking it one day at a time. My husband is better too. His nightmares have reduced significantly. One day, this will just be a scary story. Why didn't you take her to the cleaners? A variety of reasons. I had a good ecosystem that rallied around me. My boss at the time didn't cut pay. I was a valuable employee in his organization, so they gave me paid leave. So I, anyway, did not qualify for missed wages. She had to pay for my therapy up front and also my legal expenses, which were quite significant. Her husband had divorced her, so she was paying all this out of her own pocket. Whatever savings she had accumulated. This shouldn't have affected my decision, but it did. Despite everything, I never wanted revenge. Just justice. What country did this happen in? This case was quite famous, so forgive me for not saying what country I'm from. If I tell you that, you'll immediately find my name out, and I'm not okay with that. What now? Nothing. The last few years have been insanely crazy. Husband and I are just happy to exist with each other. Each day is a gift that we intend to treat it as such. What happened to her family? I will paraphrase a comment I made to someone. That day her family came to visit me at the hospital was one of the worst memories of my life. I'll never forget that day. We all broke down crying, her children, husband, me and my boyfriend. So many lives were destroyed because of this woman and her rage. At some point her children, a son who looked around 11 and a daughter who looked around 16, came forward and hugged me as we all cried. I remembered being so afraid, but at the same time being unable to move. I literally was paralyzed by fear. I didn't even realize I was crying until the children came forward and embraced me. My boyfriend was already embracing me, crying into my shoulder. Later, we found out they had paid for all the expenses I had incurred in the hospital. We were afraid this was to avoid legal recourse, but it wasn't. I genuinely believe her husband only had good intentions. After that day, I heard they filed for divorce. Her husband never came to court. After that day, we never interacted again. Her children came to court to testify, but it was obvious to everyone watching that this family was broken. The children said she was a good mother to them, but her daughter broke down crying on the stand when my lawyers asked her if she could describe that day from her perspective. It was obvious she was so terrified to see her mother in that light. After their testimonies, they didn't want anything to do with her or her court proceedings. Will you meet them? No, right now I can't. Too many horrible memories. Maybe in some years, I don't know. First, a little background story. Doug works for one of the larger banks here in Canada. For someone without post-secondary education, he's done incredibly well for himself. He's 28 now and has been working with this bank for about 9 years. He started as a teller and worked his way all the way up to just below a branch manager, but more customer service oriented. The story starts February 2020, right as COVID was starting to snowball here. Doug had worked in a few different branches over the years and was quite personable. When a former colleague told him about a position in a wealth department, he thought it might be good for a change. It was also work from a small office downtown, which meant he didn't have to go into a branch every day and deal with customers and employees face to face. He decided to apply. With a good recommendation, he got an interview. How this position works is he essentially will be working directly for two big investment banker types. But there was an office manager, we will call her Sarah, who he also reported to as well. This office manager trained him, provided support and so on. During the interview, he was told that the base salary for the new position was $10,000 per year less. But there were monthly bonuses paid out that would bring him well over the salary cap for his previous position. Once he accepted, it didn't really sit well with him since he didn't get that in writing. He got along wonderfully with his investment banker bosses. They loved having someone so personable who also had connections in the branch. The divisions were kept pretty church and state, retail/wealth, so it saved a lot of time having Doug around since he could just message friends from retail to get information without having to go through all the typical hoops. He also knew most of the systems already and got all the courses he needed very quickly. Once COVID got bad, offices were shut down. Everyone had to work from home. Since Doug was new, he kind of got shafted. He was one of the last people to get a laptop. You can't use your own. Had one monitor, regularly got stuck going into the office to mail things. Also, since he was new, he had a lot of questions and needed help regularly. With work from home, that meant Sarah had to put in a lot of effort to answer his questions. She was a miserable woman. She was condescending, took a long time to answer him, or would just say, "Figure it out." It was incredibly frustrating for Doug, especially considering the bonus he was receiving was a fraction of what he was promised. He was making considerably less money and was doing a lot more work. After about a year, February 2021 at this point, Doug was doing very well at his position. The investment bankers regularly praised him. They even got him fancy Christmas gifts. The only downside was Sarah. She was still giving Doug a very hard time and just generally was being rude and condescending. When Doug's 1 year rolled around, Sarah had a meeting with him about some issues a client was having. At the end of the meeting, she said, "Since your contract renewal is coming up, you might want to consider keeping your options open and looking for some other positions in other departments." We both knew this was an empty threat since his actual bosses basically needed him at this point. One of them started having some pretty serious health issues, and Doug was a superstar helping him through it while maintaining his book of business. We knew this was just Sarah trying to make him feel small. Even still, Doug was pretty upset after hearing this. He had been putting in 12-hour days for less money. It was borderline being bullied by Sarah the entire time, so he decided to take her advice. He sent out one application to a different division of the bank. Got a call back the same day. Turns out the lady who runs this division for our province used to work with Doug. She was his branch manager back when he was a teller. With this bank, in order to move to other departments, they touch base with your current boss. They spoke to both of his investment banker bosses, and they were taken by total surprise. They called Doug to see why he was quitting since he was doing so well. They had no idea Sarah had promised him more money in the interview and that he took a pay cut to be there. They had no idea Sarah had been treating him the way she had been since they didn't interact with her often. A day or two later, he had a Zoom meeting with the investment banker bosses and Sarah. They tried to counter-offer him the same salary, $17,000 more per year, and Sarah changed her tone completely. Tried to backpedal on what she said about looking for other positions. Doug politely declined their offer and accepted a new position, partially because he felt taken advantage of since they were so easily able to give him almost a $20,000 pay raise, but also because he didn't feel secure in the position due to Sarah's remarks. His investment banker bosses still call him regularly 4 months later to help with clients. Some of their clients only want to speak with Doug or they need Doug's help with systems he designed to make their lives easier. Now Doug works from home still, makes $17,000 more than he did in the wealth department, and his investment banker bosses pay him a few hundred a week for his freelance work. Oh, and the best of it all is that Sarah took on all of Doug's duties for months while they found his replacement. Doug's investment banker bosses told him their new assistant is someone who worked in the mail room of the office. He took 3 attempts to pass his exams and has no idea what he's doing. Back in the early 2010s, I worked for a tech company. Since I had moved interstate, I was working from home, which gave me some insulation from the office politics, especially between 2 bosses who I were referred to as good boss and bad boss, which was quickly turning the company into a blazing trash fire. One morning, good boss gave me a heads up to say that he had officially resigned, so I wasn't too surprised when bad boss called me a few hours later to tell me that I would no longer be working for the company. Having no wish to work for bad boss, I cheerfully asked him if he wanted me to finish up the rest of the day or knock off work early, and he informed me that I should stop work immediately. I wasn't the only person fired that day, as everyone with any allegiance to Good Boss was marched out the door. Did I mention that Good Boss ran the tech side of things and Bad Boss was sales and marketing? So a few days after I got fired, I got a phone call from the remaining rapidly promoted newbie tech guy, asking me to please help him with a specific problem that I recognized immediately from his description. It actually wasn't a problem he caused. The after-sales team had misconfigured something, so the tech guy didn't have a procedure for fixing this error, and didn't have the deeper product knowledge that would have let him know that it was a configuration problem, not a programming problem. I curtly reminded him that I didn't work there anymore and couldn't fix this problem. But feeling sorry for him, I did tell him what had been misconfigured and to take it back to the after-sales team so they could fix it. Unfortunately, it seemed like the appropriate knowledge holders on that team had also been let go. And despite there being an instruction document for configuring this particular aspect of the program, I know because I helped write it, it was bounced back to Newbie Tech, who called me again a few days later. I was less helpful this time and informed Newbie Tech that as I no longer worked there, I couldn't help and he shouldn't call me again. And you'd think that would be the end of it. But later that day, I got an email with a summary of the issue and a request to fix the problem from Bad Boss, the one who had fired me, the one who you'd think should be well aware that I had no longer had access to any of the servers. I would not be able to fix anything even if I wanted to, which I didn't. I ignored the email. Edit. I know a lot of people are commenting that it would have been more satisfying to charge a lot of money to solve the problem, and that I missed an opportunity to take him down a pig and slash or make a lot of money. Bad Boss had a habit of ignoring contracts and suing people for breach of contract, even if he was the one who broke the contract. I never had evidence to prove so, but he'd go so far as to forge documents and signatures. I spent many years eagerly awaiting the next legal fight he'd get into, the next trial, because surely this time he'd lose everything and go to jail. But real life is disappointing sometimes. Somehow, dudes like Bad Boss never ran out of money or lawyers. He went through a lot of lawyers. Almost a decade on, I'm actually still thrilled with my decision to ignore him and have no contact whatsoever with him after that point. People like Bad Boss thrive on conflict. It is enjoyable to think of winning against them. But for me, I still take a small pleasure in looking back and knowing that I became to him the only thing that he cannot fight, avoid. I have two older cousins who are sisters. They have both gone down the path of using drugs. Both have stolen from us before. My mother is someone who has been around addicts before. She tries her hardest to help them get out their addictions. She has done this 3 times now. My father used to be an alcoholic but has been sober for almost 27 years. For the sake of the story, I'll go through quickly about all the things these sisters had done before the main story I am talking about. Serena will be the oldest sister, Caroline the youngest sister and the main problem in the story, Alex and Sam the youngest sister's 2 kids. Now Serena and Caroline are sisters and both for a couple of years were pill poppers. But Serena, we didn't know at the time, around 2005, was trying to quit and even start to go into Addicts Anonymous, basically AA for drug addicts. Serena had lost custody of her own kids from the drugs and theft she did. Her 2 youngest were adopted by a nice Mennonite church family. Her oldest lived with her and Caroline's parents until he was old enough to move out. The Mennonites make another appearance later on. Serena was recovering at the time after losing her kids. She wanted to get clean, but more importantly, she wanted to apologize and make it up to my mother, someone she respects. Serena would come over often and talk to my mother. This was around Christmas time. We have a huge dinner every Christmas and invite relatives over. Serena and Caroline came over. Serena brought a dish to share. We all hung out in the living room, with people going to the bathroom occasionally. Now, our bathroom is right between my room and my parents' room. At the time my mom was dealing with a bad recurring foot injury, she took heavy medications to help with the pain. When it came time for another dose, my mom went to get her medication, only it was gone. She screamed at everyone, demanding to know who had them. Caroline said her sister went into my parents' room. Serena tried to defend herself, but my mom wasn't having it. She threw Serena out and they didn't really talk for a couple of years. Caroline had actually been the thief, but wanted to be in my parents' good graces, so she threw Serena under the bus. After this, Caroline went on to a worse situation. She was still doing drugs, but now I found a fellow druggie who came from money to pay for them. Caroline had a kid with him, and then, while she carried her second baby, he tried to shoot them. He was arrested and put in jail for attempted murder. She came to us and started talking to my parents about adopting the baby she was carrying. My parents have thought about doing this since. 1, I had just turned 20 and she felt empty without me, and 2, she was still doing drugs while pregnant. What we didn't know is that it was all a ruse. She got all cozy with us, then one weekend, we left for a family vacation. Caroline broke into our house and stole from us. She stole my father's Queen collection, my games and antidepressants, my brother's brand new 3Ds and all his games, all of my mom's medication, and some of her jewelry. We were livid. We got ties with her for a while. That is until the summer of 2017. Her grandparents came to us with Caroline's kids. She had been arrested for drug charges and was thrown in jail for 6 months. Her parents were currently trying to move out of state to avoid legal trouble, so they dropped the kids off on us. Alex was maybe 6 years old, and despite everything that had happened, he was the most well-behaved kid I've ever met. Sam was 2 years old and he was a hellion. He beat on his older brother all the time. He would hit him so hard. He left welts on Alex. We had to spank this kid nearly every second he tried to smack his brother. We believe in spanking in my family. We had these kids for almost 2 months, while Caroline was on parole, and as she lied again, trying to get her life together, she wasn't. We had these kids for almost 2 months. While Caroline was on parole, she lied again, trying to get her life together. But she wasn't. She had her parents take the kids to us so she could go out and get drugs again, so they didn't have to raise them. My mother had enough of Caroline and her BS. At this point, Sam had done something so horrible we couldn't deal. He kept trying to punch his brother in the groin and wouldn't stop. It drove me crazy, and poor Sam was in constant pain and fear of his little brother. It's one of the saddest things you can see when a 6-year-old is terrified of a toddler. I was a wreck at the time since I had to put college on hold to help take care of them. I wasn't dealing with my own mental health, so I started binge drinking to deal with the stress. I had this from my parents, just trying to help us get by. Everyone was stressed out and getting tired of Caroline and her lies. She had promised to send us ways to help us, but she never did, nor send us things that could help. One day my mom snapped. She packed everything the kids had, clothes, toys, food, and everything, and she drove the kids down to where Caroline was and dropped them off. Caroline begged my mom to take in her kids. She was tweaking when my mom saw her, obviously high. My mother glared at her and started telling her off. But what a horrible piece of trash she was, leaving her in an apartment with her kids. Right after that, she then notified her parole officer that she was doing drugs and had abandoned these kids on us, without giving any way for us to get legal aid or a way to care for them. Which was all true. Since she wouldn't give us their birth certificates, we couldn't file for federal aid. Nor could we get a copy since she had them as well, as was their other personal information, like social security numbers and such. Her parole officer wasn't happy to hear all this. Now this story does have a happy ending. Alex and Sam were adopted by the same Mennonite family that took Serena kids in years before. They are doing a lot better now and completely understood how we lost our cool. We help them with the boys and bring birthday and Christmas gifts for all of them. They have turned a lot for the better. We had these kids for almost 2 months. We are a low-income family getting by paycheck to paycheck. We couldn't properly take in these kids, and Caroline knew this. Serena, who had been clean for 7 years at the time these events happened, tried her hardest to help us, providing us with anything she could get off her sister. She even mentioned it to the family who later adopted the kids if they could take them in before we reached our end. Caroline was thrown back into jail recently for not going to her parole meeting and also for trying to sell drugs. From what I was told, she's in jail for 3 years now. Serena is back to normal and has a much better life than she ever did before. We still talk whenever we run into her. We hope Caroline does the same, but we really doubt it. Hope you enjoyed it. Edit 1. My parents and Serena have since reconciled. They know she never took the medication, and we get along all fine now. Edit 2. While yes, we believe in spanking, we did not once abuse these boys in any way. The reason is I wasn't as gentle is because Sam always went after his brother's groin, or tried to bite him. He bit so hard he would draw blood on occasion. Alex never fought back or defended himself, so I had to stop it. But I only ever spanked on the butt, and not any other place but the butt and timeouts. Sam's behavior lessened greatly by the time we let the new family take them in, so he wasn't as horrible. Edit 3. We never got any of our items returned. Aside from myself and my mom tracking down some of my brother's games at a pawn shop, we didn't call the cops on the matter since she had actually used the key she took to break in. That wouldn't have been seen as a case of theft at all